something has gone kind of wrong in your lineup strategy, because unless you're deliberately targeting Priest, it is still just one of the most dominant decks at the moment. And maybe if you are including Ooze in your OTK Demon Hunter, you then have a little bit more leeway to just leave up the Warrior and ban the Priest instead. I don't know. It's a point of contention that I think the players would have a lot to say on.
Well, for blitzchung, we don't quite have that sample size yet to determine whether or not he's actually planning on leaving up Priest in most situations. But from GivePLZ, we're already seeing a bit of a difference compared to how he goes. All right, love to see these two players clearly friends, right? But GivePLZ already has that different ban compared to what we saw from his series from Alutemu, right? Because he banned away the Priest. But the big difference is how the Priest is actually built from Alutemu compared to blitzchung, where Alutemu's list had Mutinous in there and double South Sea Scoundrel and N'Zoth. So that's some game against even the Cthulhu and super greedy versions from GivePLZ. Whereas blitzchung's Priest has N'Zoth and South Sea Scoundrel, but no Mutinous. That maybe offsets the fatigue.
Yeah. One matchup where fatigue will not be a concern, however, is this one right now, where max card draw all the way is pretty much the only thing that you care about. And GivePLZ, as it currently stands, has got the juice. Double Skull, both of which can be very easily outcast. The only conundrum is, do you play Spectral Sight on this turn just to kind of get it cast, which does make sense to me, even though you're only drawing one card, because he's going to have no fear of running out of card draw this game.
Oh yes, and this is a matchup where you definitely just dump all of your removal spells wherever you can. Throw Wave not earmarked for anything in particular, so I feel like that's going to be dumped out of the hand. Maybe next turn, because Chaos Strike can be a bit more mana efficient for this turn. But even an I-Beam.
Yeah. I think that's smart. I-Beam costs 1 this turn. It will not cost 1 next turn. Let's go for that. GivePLZ now has the opportunity for Triple Skull. I think it's probably correct still. Star Student Stelina had some amount of utility, obviously, in disrupting your opponent's combo, but he can expect to be so far in the lead this game that he doesn't even need to worry about disruption.
Very true. I also like using the I-Beam because he is going to have that Illidari Studies played, which means it potentially eats up the discount, right? So get it out of the hand. 1 Chaos Strike used, plenty of room in hand for at least the first skull. The next couple of skulls, it will depend what kind of things he actually gets to dump off of the discounts. But I love that he's throwing out the Ethereal Aug Merchant here. This is it still Solitaire when both people are playing Solitaire?
It's Solitaire next to each other. It's like a nice Sunday morning for an elderly couple.
Yeah. 2 people playing their own games next to each other. I mean, but to be fair, blitzchung does have his skull to be able to keep up on the next turn.
Yeah. I think weirdly enough for blitzchung, you were maybe even supposed to just shoot your own minion there, just so there's nothing for your opponent to cast their cards on. Like if they get Throwglaive or I-Beam off of the discount, you don't want to let them play those cards.
Potentially.
It's a weird matchup.
Yeah. There are some worlds where breakpoints matter. I don't think blitzchung is going to be able to get GivePLZ down to 24 with his Ethereal Aug Merchant, and not that breakpoints matter when you have double 0 Cosmo Arc. But sometimes, if you don't get the nuts discounts, then the incremental damage can matter a little bit, is the only reason I would think of for blitzchung leaving a minion on board. But look at this now from GivePLZ. Eldrazi Warblades, 2 combo pieces discounted, but blitzchung, does he just win this turn?
He just has lethal, right? He can go for Il'gynoth.
3 Moargs.
Spell damage.
So double the I-Beam. Yeah.
Oh my god. Absolutely disgusting. GivePLZ can't believe it. He had the nuts with the double skull, or the triple skull even, but it was still just too slow. blitzchung finds the lethal. Very, very well played. And GivePLZ, again, at the very least, he can find the funny side in what was absurdly a stupid game of Hearthstone.
That was a long thumbs up from GivePLZ. Longer than this game lasted, it honestly felt like.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a pretty stupid game. I'm not going to argue with you on that point. It was Solitaire, 2 people next to each other, but one person is a lot better at the game, apparently.
Solitaire, except you lean over and just slap your friend in the face at the end of it instead. Yeah, GivePLZ going to have to be moving on here. I do think that Well, actually, I was going to say that the Demon Hunter getting a win is not the most consequential. It actually kind of is. It's a big deal there that blitzchung was able to get the win with the Demon Hunter, because the remaining two decks, or the remaining decks on the other side for blitzchung will be Priest and Rogue, both of which are kind of problematic matchups for the OTK Demon Hunter now for GivePLZ. Obviously, Rogue, we can argue back and forth on. I think that's a point of contention. But Priest, we know what it can do. Elucia alone deletes the deck if you find it.
And now there's just Mutinous as well, which can, you know, sometimes chomp up exactly Il'gynoth, but even if it's not, sometimes just eating a Moarg here and there can delay the combo, which means that the Priest has more time to get to their Elucia and then dump the very crucial cards such as Il'gynoth itself. So I do think the Priest has quite a favorable there, and I'm still struggling to think whether or not Rogue is actually favored against Demon Hunter, but you seem quite decided on that point, so I'll defer to you as having more Rogue experience in that regard. As for this Control Priest build from GivePLZ, he is running N'Zoth with the Light Shower Elemental and South Sea Scoundrel package, but I don't expect to see any Scoundrels played here. You don't want to draw the Demon Hunter anything. You just want to potentially draw them if you know you're going to Elucia the very next turn.
True, it's a good point, but not relevant in this game, because it's going to be the Rogue on the other side. For GivePLZ here, which is, again, I mean, the point still stands about the South Sea Scoundrel. Very often you don't want to go for it because the kind of same point is there. You don't want to turbo draw them through their deck. You would much rather focus on your own game plan. But despite this being a matchup that we haven't seen very much at all, because Priest has not been left up very often, and if you are leaving up Priest, you're probably not bringing Rogue in your lineup, or at the very least not bringing Miracle Rogue in your lineup. But it is a matchup that I think is kind of close. As I've approached the top of Legend with Miracle Rogue last season, I found that my matchup against Priest dropped drastically, unsurprisingly, because I was playing against the likes of Gabby, Xerios, Moy, and all these incredibly strong Priest players who just kind of wrecked me. They know the matchup, and as hard as I may try to go for the burst damage later on, or to go for the tempo plan earlier on, they always seem to have the exact right piece to pick it apart, which is just the power of Priest presently.
That's a lot of peas popped there, Derek. But absolutely, I do think Priest has the tools to get there against Rogue very consistently in terms of just keeping up with the value generation, because it's not as though Priest does nothing in the early game. Even just wand makers into Scorpids and raise dead those, and that's outside of the very strong Sethic openers they can sometimes get. Whereas Demon Hunter can have those very slow starts that Rogue can sometimes abuse, even with just like Prize Plunder on one into Foxy Fraud. That can be very powerful if the Demon Hunter doesn't have ways to remove those minions immediately. That stacked up damage can get there. But for Priest, though, I don't think that's going to be too much of a problem, because they can recoup their healing in small increments throughout the game rather than it having to be in huge bursts as Demon Hunter often does.
One thing I will say that is definitely going to be helping this matchup a lot for GivePLZ is that in order to make room for the N'Zoth package and Mutinous, Condemn has been deleted from the list here for GivePLZ, as we saw a little earlier, which is a huge deal in the matchup. Condemn just deletes almost any board that Rogue can develop when it hits rank 2, and obviously especially rank 3. And so having to rely almost purely on Xyrella, Blademaster Samuro, and Soul Mirror, all of which are legendary cards, it can be a little bit awkward trying to find the effective board clears against Rogue. And so for blitzchung, going for the aggressive game plan here with just neophytes on the board, pushing a lot of damage, this can get some stuff done.
Can, but it's all a little bit awkward starting from here, right? Having to play a neophyte off curve and not really getting past any breakpoints of relevant spells, because I don't think GivePLZ would want to Hysteria this shape of board. He is, however, going to Samuro to make sure that he's getting 5 less damage taken next turn. No Apotheosis in hand, so I think it's a very warranted use, right? All he needs to do is survive until Light Shower Elemental to get that healing. You don't need the Samuro Apo in this matchup, because the Light Shower, outside of Rogue generating Devolving Missiles, you're guaranteed to get that 8 damage or of healing at some point.
That's very true. But blitzchung now presents with a really tough turn. I will admit that generally I would rather Secret Passage before I would Field Contact in Rogue. That's usually the order that I prefer, just so that you can get more benefit off of the Field Contact. But this Field Contact is just pretty good on this turn, and the Secret Passage gave you no guaranteed way to actually clear the Samuro on the following turn. The way I was looking at it, honestly, is going Prize Plunderer to deliberately not kill it and then coin out the Brain Freeze just to get more activations instead, though.
That would have been one more draw, so you'd have to assume blitzchung is valuing the coin to go with Secret Passage, maybe to give him more flexibility to play whatever he gets off of that. But I am a little bit surprised to see just Field Contact this turn because it's only a single draw. And against all odds is a pickup for GivePLZ here. That's pretty good.
That's sick against Rogue. So many of their minions are that 3-attack breakpoint, be it Man Crick, Big Man Crick, Kazakus, the Kazakus Golems, the Field Contact. The vast majority of them you're going to be sweeping up with that. So I think that's a cool pick. And we're finally seeing some of the new cards creep their way in aside from Mutinous and Crash.
Vanessa gives him his stereo, which is honestly not great.
Yeah.
But it's a way to keep the Field Contact train going and get some board presence, so blitzchung is going to take it. Already looks like he's out of value this early on in the game.
And with this being the second Field Contact for GivePLZ, oh, okay, that makes things a lot easier. But I was going to say, at this point, despite describing all the myriad cards that Against All Odds can clear, I think you would have just played it there just to deal with the Field Contact. Outside of that, blitzchung's deck is extremely low on draw.
Yeah, I think that still would have been a very reasonable turn for GivePLZ. Of course, he got a better option with Hysteria that allows him to also end the turn ahead on board with the Wand Maker. But even if he just played Against All Odds, I think blitzchung was in a tough spot. Does get Evocation from the Wand Thief, so with another Secret Passage, maybe there's a way for blitzchung to generate some value that he sorely needs.
Can do the fancy play, but now GivePLZ, I mean, you have to imagine he's just going to pull from a good position to a better position. Swindle is the kind of card blitzchung needs to have any real chance in this game whatsoever. But GivePLZ's hand is stocked up on value, it's stocked up on removal. The only thing he's missing, arguably, is heal, I guess, which there's plenty of in his deck to find.
And he is going to go back up to 30 after this Prize Plunderer trades in. You have to imagine blitzchung could think about playing the other Prize Plunderer, but he'll decide after he sees what comes off this Foxy Swindle. All right, he is just going to go all in with this board, again, trying to take advantage of the lack of condemns. I think it's perfectly warranted here. And he also kind of wants to create some hand space because now he has that Secret Passage to go with Evocation.
And so, Against All Odds, seems like it's pretty well positioned here. Obviously, like a Soul Mirror is okay as well, but I think you can save that for later on and just tempo out the Against All Odds. Even playing the Focused Will here to give your minion +3 health. I'd take that.
Yeah, I think it's fine. Like, you could think about holding it for Sethic, but it's pretty ambitious to think you'd have a better target than +3 health next turn. Oh, it's not Evocation first. Alright, I guess blitzchung doesn't want to do the fancy play. I mean, to be fair, it's very rarely actually good, right? If you're not able to draw all of those cards, a lot of the time you're just top decking below average mage spells.
Studies is pretty good.
I would look at Counterspell potentially, but there's not that much mana to play with.
I think taking Studies just to hit Steward of Scrolls is more valuable. You're so likely to hit damage with that chain of Studies Steward into burst damage.
Speaking of damage, there was a spell damage option for blitzchung there. I think he probably ended up on card draw, but there it is, the Steward of Scrolls. Again, you're very likely to hit it because there's so few neutral spell damage minions, like you said.
Okay, getting interesting now. Again, GivePLZ's hand is kind of reaching that point that the most recent iteration of Priest decks have fallen into, where it's a little clunky. It's a hand that's full of big minions rather than removal. Like, again, just think of what a single extra piece of healing or a condemn would do here to answer this board. And so instead, he's relegated to just N'Zoth that summons him only a 6/6 Light Shower Elemental back. That might just not be enough value.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at potentially Illucia or Mutinous here because he knows about a Golem in hand, which is pretty good to dump, and also a generated spell damage minion, which you'd have to assume is Steward of Scrolls at best, which is also pretty good to get rid of. So, like, Mutinous in terms of disruption also can hit Alex at this point, which is huge. And then I was thinking Illucia because you have a lot more flexibility to choose what you actually get rid of, but he is just going to go for the safest play here because both my suggestions definitely had some failure rate for sure.
They did, but your plays were slightly more optimistic, right? You took one potentially scary turn to set up for very powerful plays later on after you'd cleared the board and start healing up then, whereas now GivePLZ, you know, Illucia is going to be impactful, of course, but I kind of feel like he's under threat of just being outvalued in the mid game because, again, while his hand is very high value in a sense with the Onyx Mage Scribe, it's not quick. He's just going to be tempoed down before any of that can really take effect. And now as blitzchung is digging for, you'd have to imagine 5 Golem into +2/+2. It's getting a little scary for GivePLZ.
That'd be very powerful indeed. He hits Rush or like Rush was an option and there's the copy available. That's also pretty good. Okay, Rush deals 3. Sure. That's a full clear. So the N'Zoth accomplished what GivePLZ was hoping for it to do. Oh, wait.
Oh no! He forgot!
I forgot too. The N'Zoth heals up because of the Light Shower. Uh-oh.
Well, that's a big blunder.
Potentially made a trade that GivePLZ wanted to make for him, so blitzchung loses at most one more minion, or at least one more minion because of it.
Well, I mean, what was I just saying about GivePLZ's hand not being able to keep up on board? Now, you can heal it back up. This could just be a Sethic turn straight up if you wanted to. With the Holy Smite, it could be a Mage Scribe turn. It could be both if you want to get as much bodies on board as possible. And now I think blitzchung is in that situation you often walk into when you're against Priest, where you just fall too far behind.
Interesting that GivePLZ chose to smite the 3/2 over the 3/3. Like, very little difference if you're going to end up trading into the Kazakas anyway.
True.
GivePLZ got that huge turn to swing the board. He's back up to full health, and now the Mutinous looks a lot more powerful. He's under a lot less pressure, but this could also still just be an Illucia turn because he can give the Mutinous into a hand where, like, it's going to be eating stuff from blitzchung's hand, right?
Oh no. I mean, it's kind of good just to deny Jandas, but it's kind of bad, obviously, because you just get +2/+1.
It's, I think, an overall win. But the big deal is that blitzchung has retained this Alexstrasza, even though he's had to use Tenwu prior to that. It's still a big threat.
A lot of damage available now for blitzchung, however. If he can find any kind of burn damage here, like an Apexis Blast, he should be in a pretty good position.
Still quite a few minions in the deck, so he can't get it to go off at the moment. But the Shattering is not bad here, just to get rid of the Mutinous.
Is it better than Apexis? Like, 5 damage face when you have Stewart into Wicked Stab Alexstrasza? Like, you could just leave it sitting there for a turn, right?
I think he was scared of Apotheosis, maybe.
Sure.
Well, this is still problematic for GivePLZ because he is starting to get to the point where he really wants to Illucia to dump burst spells, but he's under too much pressure. But now with the Wave of Apathy, might be able to do both. The hand he would give over includes Auspicious Spirits already corrupted, though, so that's a bit iffy. But I'd be very attentive to just Wave Illucia here.
It's tempting. I'm kind of looking at Wave Soul Mirror as well. Just wondering if you can get away with that to stick your own board and try and fight back with the buff spell you have in hand of Power Infusion.
It's true. The Soul Mirror is hard to maneuver by this point.
Okay, it just goes Soul
going
Mirror.
Soul Mirror first and then holds onto the wave. So maybe it's Wave Elutia on the next turn. Like the wave into Soul Mirror does like temporarily get rid of Blitzchung's pressure, but if he has ways to get rid of GivePLZ's minions, then maybe GivePLZ was just hoping for a cleaner clear.
Fair enough. Well, either way, I think here you can look at just going Alexstrasza face, and then probably you have to clear off the Mancrick with Swing plus Dagger, with even potentially Orc Merchant to give your guy Divine Shield first, just because of the threat of Apo.
What do you think about maybe front loading the Steward and Wicked Stab in case there is Elutia? Because Alexstrasza is one of the cards that they cannot dump if they play Elutia into it and it's not discounted by Insight or something like that.
No, that's actually a very interesting point. I mean, this allows you to go Alex plus Wicked Stab next turn, so it ups your immediate burn damage.
Yeah.
But wow, didn't play around the Apotheosis. Comes off the top as well, and now with the Power Infusion in addition to that, this is a lot of healing.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, I was also thinking that the trade was going to happen, like you said, because blitzchung was playing around Apotheosis pretty heavily to get rid of the Mutinous a couple turns ago. And since then, it's only gotten more likely for GivePLZ to have it in hand. So this is potentially a big punish.
Yeah, I guess maybe he had the read that if Apotheosis was in hand, he would have played it on the same turn as the Soul Mirror on like the opposing Mancrick, so that GivePLZ could have immediately healed up. Would be my best guess, but you know, if you made that read, you can't play around it being off the top. And while it's a calculated risk, it does not pay off here for blitzchung. And so now GivePLZ just needs to consider, how do I survive this turn?
Well, I think it goes exactly what you said, right? Power Infusion and Apotheosis, Hero Power. You can even wave to be completely safe here because he knows about Alex coming back the other way. Doesn't want the Mancrick to be within range of Alex and Trades to kill it off. So I think the wave is super warranted.
Was it 16, 18, 8, 6, 3? Yeah, it would have been a little bit too much. And now he's alive up 1? Oh no, at 3, sorry.
At 3? Yeah.
Yeah.
And blitzchung is looking for devolving missiles because I don't think he can afford to just Alex Wicked Stab this minion.
Well, he can't get devolving, right?
Oh, sorry,
rogue spells.
My bad.
So assassinate
there. Yeah, assassinate. Malevolent Strike, is that a rogue spell?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
I mean, well, just Brain Freeze alone would be good enough. But I agree, this does revolve around answering the Mancrick in one way or another. And this is one way to do it. My goodness, sinking a full 14 burst damage into this minion and trying to win on board.
blitzchung just banking on GivePLZ not having an answer for the Alex, which to be fair, GivePLZ is not naturally running that many removal spells. There's one Shadow Word Death, but he has seen a Samuro and he's seen N'Zoth. Okay. Yeah.
What does he discard? Losing the Elutia kind of hurts, but at the same time, there's very limited value left here for blitzchung. Swindle can only draw in Foxy Fraud, so nothing going there. He just has to Shadow Step to try and find... I don't even know what you could get in Rogue's arsenal. Well, first of all, he needs, I guess, an answer to this Deathwing through Brain Freeze.
Or Assassinate and play it next turn, I don't know. Just not getting there. Even if he takes Wicked Stab and the Backstab, it's not enough to get rid of the Deathwing, so blitzchung is going to throw it down. That came to a very close match at the very conclusion there. GivePLZ had nearly run out of value, but we could see blitzchung only had the Steward and Foxy Fraud, whereas the last card for GivePLZ was an Auspicious Spirits, which like at worst is a 4/4, right? And that was probably enough to get there against that Steward, not to mention the Deathwing sticking.
really weird game overall. I'm left kind of unconvinced as to whether GivePLZ's plays in the mid game were necessarily correct. I think he made plays that were kind of weak on board. I mean, obviously we can attribute the real swing turn to blitzchung in just the complete blunder in terms of Light Shower and N'Zoth and just not keeping track of how that interaction would work. It gets even weirder when you factor in that he had the Rush Golem in hand with copy, so it could have gone like Rush Golem, 10-woo it, play it again anyway, so that he would be able to just get through both of them the old-fashioned way.
Yeah, that was definitely a big turning point there. And the fact that it got so close in the end, you kind of have to look back and think if blitzchung had not made that blunder, he was probably going to win the game with this iteration. However, I am just hoping that blitzchung will slow down a little bit in the next game and completely concentrate, because this is high stakes. He had this seed given to him pretty early. I mean, he earned it with the double specialist weeks, but he didn't really have to worry about losing that spot for a very, very long time, right? I don't want to see him get complacent, because I do think he is one of the best players that APAC has to offer, and it is, you know, a conscious choice to leave up the Priest, and if you're going to leave up a deck that powerful, you cannot afford to be making these types of mistakes.
Absolutely not. But the Priest getting the win now is obviously nice for GivePLZ. I still think the Priest was pretty likely to get a win at some point in either the Mirror, God forbid, or against the Rogue at that point. It's really just the Demon Hunter where I think GivePLZ is still going to be struggling. While, you know, the raging debate continues as two of the most popular unbanned decks. How does Rogue fare against OTK Demon Hunter? Which we may still yet get to see. But I think against Priest, you know, we both know how disastrous that matchup usually is for the OTK Demon Hunter against Priest, with them just having to find a Lucia and then everything crumbles. But for blitzchung now, he is going to be taking the other side of the matchup here, given that he now has the chance to play his Control Priest into the Rogue on the other side. And this Gia is much more the kind of list that I am looking for to take down a Rogue. Double Condemn just gives you so much extra removal, in addition to, of course, Samuro, Zyrella, and the Soul Mirror. This is looking like a very, very good matchup for blitzchung.
Yeah, I definitely agree. The Light Shower Elementals into N'Zoth also doesn't hurt towards the top end to make sure that you can completely lock out the game. But you're right, having those double condemns, make sure you don't fall too behind in the early game, as blitzchung was trying to abuse just a while ago from the other side of this matchup. GivePLZ's list in the Priest did have a bit more greed in there, you'd have to assume, to be able to be better against other Priests. And blitzchung at least still has like double South Sea Scoundrel in there if he is looking to run up into these greedier matchups. But for now, I don't think it's going to be super relevant against Rogue.
Well, right out the gate, a reasonable hand for GivePLZ. You're always happy to see field contact against Rogue, just so that you don't have those kind of dead draws that we saw blitzchung potentially wandering into in the mid-game. When he was on the Rogue, the other way around. But it's still a little bit of an awkward field contact hand, because he's got the reactive Battle Cry and combo cards, as opposed to the proactive ones like Vanessa, Foxy here, and the One Thief as well.
As for blitzchung, it's a whole load of nothing to do in the early game. No early minions to actually get that chain with Raise Dead rolling, which makes it such that it feels like he's just going to wait for a very long time until Samuro Apo can reset his health that he'll have lost a lot of by then and clear the board, which is honestly not a terrible game plan.
Yeah, Samuro Apo alone is just the winner in the matchup. Is just where the one thing you don't want to see when you feel like you're potentially in a winning situation as Rogue. GivePLZ though does have a pretty spicy play here with field contact coin Orc Merchant, because if you run through in your head, what does Priest have to answer this? There's one card, right, and it's Blademaster Samuro. I think pretty much nothing else actually answers this. I guess like Condemn plus Holy Smite, but unfortunately for GivePLZ, it's the one thing he did not want to see from blitzchung.
Yeah, completely agree. It would have to be 2 card combinations, if not for exactly Samuro, and so GivePLZ took that risk. blitzchung does still have to use a pretty valuable resource, so I don't think GivePLZ is overall punished for it, especially having top deck the best possible follow-up to that turn.
And the other thing is that with blitzchung, oh my goodness, this powered feast is disgusting.
It's so strong.
Yeah, that is illegal. Having the raised dead as well is just insane because he's guaranteed to resurrect Samuro, so he can still go for the Samuro Apo game plan despite having used the Samuro in this early game to clear off the field contact as well. It's just he's having his cake and he's eating it here. He's having a true power word feast. He is the guy in the picture right now.
He's Osaka? For the feast?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
he is
the Samuro is too powerful that it's denying the golem because it's just not really clean. I didn't really get to see what GivePLZ picked as an option, but I figure it wasn't necessarily reactive, right? Because he felt he was in a relatively strong spot after having seen the Samuro, but the Power Word Feast is choosing or making him divert from that game plan to a fully responsive turn. Still pretty good for GivePLZ. He can follow up with the golem instead, but you're absolutely right in the raised dead being too premium for blitzchung right now.
Yeah, you absolutely slam it down. It gives full information to your opponent, but it's not something that, honestly, they can especially play around as a rogue. Their entire suite of minions just get swept up by Blademaster Samuro's crazy cleave-in action. How he fills out the rest of his turn, though, is probably populated by Sethic. I think it looks like a pretty decent Sethic turn with the Holy Smite and potentially even Renew as well. But
yeah,
wow, he's... Okay,
I was very tempted by the Sethic turn. I mean, he started with Wandmaker, which still allowed him the mana to go for at minimum Holy Smite Renew.
Yeah.
But having picked up second Holy Smite, I think that completely deletes any need for Blademaster Samuro here, right? He can just get more value and hold on to that Samuro, which he doesn't have a guaranteed way of getting a third copy to go with Apotheosis, so I think this is a lot better. However, this looks like the type of board that Greater Golem, if it is any reactive type of it, can sweep up very easily.
Yeah, he was offered deal 3 damage, but I imagine, given the fact that he hasn't slammed it down on this turn, he probably picked +2/+2, given that he has been aggressively trying to stick a board for the last few turns.
Yeah. Picks up Deep Freeze, which is pretty good a little bit later on, just to stick that board you were talking about. But the Vanessa coming in here just for a Holy Smite to answer the Sethic is a little bit low value, and blitzchung has plenty of value where this came from.
No doubt. And, okay, weird turn now for GivePLZ because... Greater Golem is obviously about as good as you can get in this matchup, especially with the Octobot picked up as well. But weirdly enough, there was some kind of a play you could maybe make with value trading with Vanessa, bouncing it with Tenwu, getting a power infusion, and then setting up for double Golem next turn with Golem, Tenwu, Golem to get a double buff on your board. That was kind of interesting, but he just takes the immediately more impactful play, which obviously carries a lot of merit as well.
Certainly worth thinking about, and honestly, I'm getting a little bit worried that both these players are playing much faster than they necessarily need to be. The turns are a lot more complicated. But GivePLZ, I think this is still super reasonable, right, to front load the damage, and you know, having the weaker minions on board for one more turn is one more turn where you're vulnerable to condemn, and then the golem for buff becomes a bit harder to get the payoff. As for blitzchung here, without the Sethic, all of these are looking pretty weak.
Yeah, the power infusion would have cost 3 on this turn, but obviously if he's planning to use Hysteria now, it's really just about whether or not he could have fit in the Samuro with the power infusion. Oh, sorry, with the powered Fortitude next turn.
Definitely liking the look of palm reading here. He's got a lot of expensive spells that look like they could use a discount.
Yes, even if it's just Alex that was discounted, he still just has Shadow Word Ruin, so I completely agree.
Deep Freeze going to continue the curve for GivePLZ, but he's got so much health to work through. He knows about Samuro in hand.
My blade seeks vengeance.
Going with Samuro's Psych Split, that's pretty sick as well.
That's a clear.
Damn, very, very nice. And even though he wasn't able to get the Samuro Apo play, he's at 27 health, so he doesn't even need it. And correctly realizing that just pulling ahead on the board is the more, well, just the correct game plan. You're being more proactive here, which I think puts you in a very, very good position.
Scorpid being alive is such a pain as well, because GivePLZ really just wants to drop down this Jandis.
What makes something...
I mean, you literally had to play the Swindle there because your hand was completely dry. What you do with the rest is up for debate, though. And even though he gets Moonfang here, well, I was going to say the Scorpid can take care of it. He's in such a good position. blitzchung does not even need to go for the Scorpid. He can just rip Shadow Word Ruin straight away to delete both of these and just continue to be miles ahead.
Because there is, you know, a potential mind game here for GivePLZ. The interaction of Moonfang and Poison does give merit to putting the illusion on either of these. But again, blitzchung does not need to care. Shadow Word Ruin. He can Apotheosis Scorpid. That's really rough for a rogue to remove. Or sorry, Power Word Fortitude plus Apotheosis.
Oh, yeah.
How about that?
No, I love this. As long as he's not bringing it to above 5 attack, which he does not do very, very cleverly. He can delete the entire board. And again, Rogue just does not come back from situations like this. They need to be ahead on board so they can push that chip damage to close out with Alex. If they're not, they lose.
12 points of burst in hand, but nothing doing. It is so far away from being able to deal that 28 or even just kill the Scorpid. So blitzchung takes a very fast win on the Priest here. And, you know, just given the power we've seen from Priest in both those games, I'm starting to reevaluate whether I think that Warrior really should have been the ban, but you know, I definitely trust these players to have put in the testing. For GivePLZ, again, I'm still trying to figure out the turning point for him to have banned Warrior instead of Priest last game against Alutemu, because the big difference between the Priest list is just mutinous as far as I can see, because blitzchung is still just running the double Scoundrels.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, I still think that overall, if I had to choose with regards to Rogue, what would I rather run into? I would rather run into Priest than I would this Control Warrior. I think that the Control Warrior is just an absolute nightmare matchup, whereas against the Priest, you know, a good portion of my wins come on like turn 6 or 7 where I just play a bunch of stuff, and if they don't have the Samuro Apo, they don't have the Zyrella, they don't have the Condemns, which a lot of lists are playing 1 or 0, you can just win. It doesn't happen often, but it happens more often than against Warrior, who literally always clear your board. You never get the aggro win con against Control Warrior, and then late game I think it becomes very, very difficult. Obviously you have to consider the Demon Hunter as well, which I think has a much better chance of taking the win against the Control Warrior than it does against the Priest. But again, the real problem I have with the strategy isn't if it's necessarily wrong to ban Warrior with the way they've built their lineup. It's to not construct their lineup in a way that justifies banning Priest more and being able to beat this Control Warrior instead.
It's true. Although, now that you mentioned the Demon Hunter, I am realizing that almost everybody's cut the Ooze in there, so Control Warrior actually does have quite a strong matchup in the end with the Bulwark at the end of the game. Not impossible for Demon Hunter, like they can sometimes survive long enough to ping down the Bulwark if it's not drawn by Corsair Cash and therefore only has 4 charges, but I do think the Warrior is pretty strong in that regard. blitzchung's version of Control Warrior has the Rattlegore instead of Cthulhu at the top end, which is pretty interesting that GivePLZ still finds that worth the trouble of banning, because I do think his Priest ends up having a good matchup there, but we can talk about that another time, maybe in another series, if either of these players faces somebody where they're banning the Priest instead of Warrior, perhaps, because now it's just the Rogue left for blitzchung, whereas GivePLZ has both that OTK Demon Hunter and the Rogue. And even though I'm still in the camp of thinking OTK Demon Hunter has a good matchup against Rogue, because GivePLZ has to win twice, of course, blitzchung is still with the advantage.
Ooh, all right. Looking at a spicy matchup now. Obviously, GivePLZ has to get the win here if he wants to sail through to the semi-finals. Taking a loss for either of these players does not mean that they are out of contention for the semi-finals of playoffs or even that spot in World Championships. Then we go down to the losers bracket match to take on the winner of Alutemu versus Shaxi. But just having that safety of mind that you are just through without having to play another series, I think is worth a lot. And so for GivePLZ to find a hand like this will be a big weight off of his mind with yet another game of double skull.
And one of them already on the left. The Moarg is looking a little bit awkward to get rid of, but he's just holding on to it for when blitzchung develops a board, right? And he could use even the Fell Scream Blast at worst because the I-Beam also looks like it's going to be locked in for quite some time. But as it happens, blitzchung's just not doing anything until turn 3. I thought that even tempo Foxy Fraud turn 2 looked pretty decent.
Yeah, me too. Or even just coin out the Mancrick instead. But holding onto the coin, it's, you know, respectable. Hero powering on turn 2 and then saving for another turn is not bad at all. As long as he has the mana to go for Neophyte on turn 5, you'd have to imagine. I think things will be okay. But the problem is, with this hand now, he wants to go Kazakus into 5-mana Kazakus Golem. And so denying the Skull may not even be at the top of his priorities.
That's fair, though. You can semi-deny Skull in a way, though, by presenting 10 damage on board, because he did get Divine Shield. Sorry, I didn't see if he got copy. They're playing so fast. But if you do play down Divine Shield 5 times 2, it often makes the Skull very painful for GivePLZ to have to go through.
Yeah, not offered the copy. I think draw 2 was probably the best he was going to be offered there, which is not great here, to be honest. He doesn't need cards. He needs pressure, because he has a lot of value already, a lot of aggression that he can get on the board.
And because it's not the max tempo golem, we might see him deviate to a Neophyte turn or even coin Jandis. But for now, GivePLZ has the option of dumping a Moarg, which we have seen going into a Golem turn, right? Because they don't often take Rush in the matchup, and it can be like a sticking point where if you want to develop your Golem, then I'm going to have a Moarg on board and have a very easy time of clearing it up. And if you're going to deviate, then that's kind of a win for GivePLZ because he gets to have a safer Skull turn.
Yeah, we saw it last week from Alutemo, and it continues to just be a very, very clever play here. Because even though generally Rogue has very easy answers to a tempo Moarg, because of the rigidity of their turn wanting to go for the Greater Golem, he can't find that. And so what is the turn instead? Is it Neophyte Wicked Stab? That sounds pretty dreadful.
It does, doesn't it? But the Jandis also seems like she's going to get eaten up entirely if you leave a Moarg on board. And so I think he does have to take the lackluster turn here. Could potentially even Secret Passage to try and find Brain Freeze if he feels like that's not good enough. But okay, interesting. Oh, so he's retaining the Neophyte for another shot at Skull Disruption next turn. And then just looking for Brain Freeze or Prize Plunderer right now.
Wow.
Wait, isn't it Vanessa first? Okay.
Yeah.
Don't want to waste the combo from the Foxy.
Damn, that's pretty sick. I did not see this line, you know, I will freely admit, of going for the Secret Passage at the end. But it allows him to keep the Wicked Stab available. It allows him to play Jandis next turn and keep the Golem active. I think this was very, very clever from blitzchung.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about just Passage, but not all of this stuff going before it, which is very effective for both disrupting the Skull, getting the Vanessa down, and also leaving him with a zero-cost Neophyte in hand, right, which potentially gets a lot more value later on.
Maybe.
GivePLZ does have this Eldrazi Warblade still. Which is like not a bad turn overall. He can clear 2 minions and just Skull next turn. He's under not that much pressure. It's up to blitzchung whether he can play the Neophyte more than once this turn to once again deny Skull.
What makes something real?
Yeah. And it will also depend on how threatening these Jandis minions are. And with Fortune Teller and Keyword and Ivory, these are of the size where you can theoretically ignore them for a turn. It gets scary because this is over 10 damage on the board. But still, you have to be able to take these risky lines as the OTK Demon Hunter. And so very correctly, just throwing out the Skull.
I'm not super convinced by the Neophyte this turn because the Skull is still playable, and if the Skull discounts an Immolation Aura, then that would also still be playable because it's discounted by 3,
True.
and then the Neophyte brings it back up to 0 because of the negative thing. But as it happens, GivePLZ has not hit Immolation Aura whatsoever. I guess what the Neophyte does is remove some other niche outs, like having to play a minion and then a Fell Scream Blast, all with that mana, which is a lot harder with the discount, or sorry, the expensiveness from Neophyte.
Don't think I can see any reason to play the Illidari studies on this turn because obviously I-Beam unfortunately does not go down to 0. It stays at 1 when it's in the outcast position. And so you may as well just save it, try and find, I don't know, Skull next turn, whatever it may be. It's going to be more useful than playing it here.
He's also just got a lot of damage next turn. He's just scared of the Neophyte getting replayed, right? Because the Il'gynoth costs 1, he has a Morg and some spell damage. He has Fell Scream and I-Beam, so I think GivePLZ is just kind of counting it up right now. I don't think he's likely to die this turn. There is 14 on board, so even with 2 Wicked Stabs, he'd be alive.
Yeah, be alive at 1 with the dagger as well, right? Which is very, very precarious of a situation to be in. But again, as I said, you often live life on the edge as an OTK Demon Hunter. And so are we thinking Greater Golem to put more attack on the board or Field Contact Swindle to technically draw more cards?
It's really close, right? Because if I'm blitzchung, I'm just interested in stepping this Neophyte one way or another, which if you go Field Contact Swindle, you give yourself a 10 woo out, which the Golem for draw into Shadow Step. It's only Shadow Step that lets you do that. But he does hit the Shadow Step, which is huge. He adds another Neophyte, which is huge. I can't count this damage and mana for GivePLZ fast enough.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and tell you it's not lethal here.
Is it really not? Wait. Okay, if he had all the mana, it might be right because he has I-Beam and Fell Scream Blast and the Eldrazi Swing.
Still only 20 damage, right? And he can't go face. It would have been like 22. Chaos Strike as well. Maybe, yeah. It gets close. But with none of this mana to work with, I think it's still just a little ways off.
And so he has to divert to a clearing game plan, which means Fell Scream gets used on, I guess, Vanessa, because he wants to clear the Field Contact and the highest attack minion. But it's pretty good for blitzchung to have the Neophyte far away from the Field Contact. And just Thalnos and Moarg is actually only 4 damage of clearing power, which is not enough to get through the Keyword and Ivory.
Skull costs 7. There's, yeah, I mean, I was going to wonder if there's any like niche outs you could hit off of specifically Skull if you just go start with Il'gynoth to clear room, but I think it's too niche.
I think he might have to I-Beam the Keywarden and then just Fell Scream the stuff on the left, but then yeah, that's the entire turn. So he's going it... Okay. This way, I think, allows him to get in the swing. Which, there was a way to leave 2 minions on board that weren't necessarily threatening, and you save the swing, but then this method gives you the Morg less challenged on board, so I don't mind it from GivePLZ.
Yep, it's a very nice clear turn from GivePLZ, and he has the Skull still ready to go. 1 mana Il'gynoth, the combo still very much intact, make no mistake. But GivePLZ is not going to give him any breathing room whatsoever. Going to be trying to draw through to the Tenwu to go with the Alexstrasza, of course, but doesn't have all too much mana to work with here, annoyingly enough. No Octobot found to discount this hand. It's pretty rough as well.
Does at least have Brain Freeze to one-shot the Moarg, but I agree it does feel pretty awful to be spending mana on just Dagger to get rid of Thalnos at this point in the game. Kinda think he has to, though. There's... Okay, double Og Merchant instead. Sure, that presents even more damage on board, namely 14 damage, and he keeps the... Oh, sorry, I thought he would play the other Og Merchant as well.
Yeah, I think saving it for Octobot, should he find that, to try and reduce the cost of his hand.
Well, this is only 12 represented from blitzchung, so I think GivePLZ is fine to Skull here, even if he doesn't clear any of this board, and he'll likely will be able to clear it off of things from Skull, or part of it.
Dreadlord's Bite is a little interesting, because you can technically play it along... Oh no, you can't play it alongside the Skull, sorry. Oh no, you could, sorry, with the discount 1 and then 1. Which is kind of interesting. Clear off the Divine Shield, you can take some more of the attack off the board, finally deal with this Neophyte as well.
Yeah, the second Neophyte being gone is a huge deal for GivePLZ. Doesn't have to worry about disruption, and now Morg, 1 spell damage. So GivePLZ is going to take some time and count this up. This is essentially 2 Morgs with the philosophy. And so, like, 24 is available next turn. So he can actually swing face to set up the lethal. But he would leave up the Neophyte doing that. So I think it's kill the Neophyte now. Rogue doesn't play any taunts. And then you just deal the 24 plus the weapon swing next turn.
Agreed. I think he just found the line just to make sure that no shenanigans can occur. Still has Chaos Strike as well in the list as well. Double Talented Arcanist. So there are draws to make it even more damage here.
More!
Yeah.
Now, blitzchung obviously doesn't have the information we have, right? He won't know whether the breakpoint is 24 or 28 or 36 or 48. And so while we can see that the Alex face play allows him to survive this turn, I don't think blitzchung should make it. I don't think it's correct. Because from blitzchung's perspective, his best avenue of winning the game is for GivePLZ to maybe not have the Il'gynoth just yet, and then set up the lethal for the next turn. But he will get the news that GivePLZ absolutely has it, set it up last turn, 24 damage plus the weapon swing. There's a little bit extra with the Chaos Strike as well.
Yeah, I mean, he also has 1 billion mana left over at the end of this. He could have kept drawing and drawing to find even more damage if it was even needed. Not that it is. GivePLZ finally able to take a win with the OTK Demon Hunter, and that is a big deal, of course. Perfect lethal here. And means that we are going to a Game 5. Demon Hunter and Priest have both won for both players, and now the Rogue is the only class left for both of our players. It's just been Rogue losing all the way along here in this series, and now that it is the Rogue Mirror to decide things, finally one of them is going to win, but one player is going to walk away. Very sad that they lost the Mirror to lose the series.
It does always feel like in recent memory it comes down to Rogue Mirrors, right? Both when I was casting in APAC and Europe yesterday, and the Mirror does tend to feel very one-sided when one player hits the Octobot. So again, I am hoping and praying that it's either both of them have it or neither of them have it. It feels like Encanter's flow in the Mage Mirror Dark. That's how bad it is.
Very true. Yeah. And here we can see everything blitzchung trying to do to scrabble together for any kind of a board presence. I think he played it very well for the most part. He did make it awkward for his opponent at all points. His playing out of the Neophytes, I think, was for the most part very clever. You did bring up a good point that maybe should have saved 1 Neophyte for a turn, because he played it into turn 7, which still allowed for a Skull to be played in the outcast position. But even having considered that, like, I think there was a lot of hidden breakpoints that you can consider that he does play around with, the likes of I-Beam, things like that as well, that maybe allowed him to stick a little bit more damage.
Yeah, there's just too many different iterations, right? And you cannot account for what exactly gets discounted off the skull. So the only very clean Neophyte turn is going into that very first skull before any discounts outside of Illidari studies could have happened. So I think for the most part, blitzchung also did have very, very good understanding. A lot cleaner than it was, at least versus the Priest. And now it's going to come down to the Rogue Mirror. In the world where there is a no Octobot start for both players, I tend to think that actually just curving out with things like Neophyte, Foxy Fraud is very, very powerful, because without the Neophyte discounts, it's actually tough to clear those entire wide boards all at once.
Well, speaking of those wide boards, blitzchung has got a hand that can give him exactly that, and aside from the Neophyte, I was pretty interested in holding on to everything there in that hand. I guess reducing the Shadow Step doesn't do anything, so just looking for more minions. But again, it was the kind of hand that just draws like an absolute machine.
It really does. Honestly, I wouldn't have hated the Neophyte keep just to be like a guaranteed Battlecry minion that will be discounted by the Octobot. That goes with the field contact turn, but I don't mind blitzchung throwing it, because you'd much rather have like Wand Thief, Pride Plunderer, anything cheaper, so that the field contact turn can happen even sooner. But the one thing that's not up for debate is just coining the Octobot. It is impossible for Rogue to deal with this in one fell swoop that early.
Yeah, pretty much nothing that can be done at all. One thief step, one thief devolving missiles. You know, you're in ridiculous territory like that already, so guaranteed to stick around for a turn. However, GivePLZ does have the option, as he is clearly demonstrating here, of just chilling, just not playing anything, and trying to get to the point where this prize plunderer can deal with the Octobot in one fell swoop, as we may be able to see in this game.
It's so big that blitzchung played Cult Neophyte this turn. I mean, it's not that like he was trying to disrupt anything in particular. It was just a good curve play. But GivePLZ could have gone for a clear this turn if that were intact, right?
He could still go for the clear, right? He could go Foxy, one thief, step the Foxy, and then prize plunderer. In order to kill the Octobot in one swoop. The problem, of course, is that you then don't kill the 3-2 Neophyte, which then just, you know, decimates your board. The Foxy dies, the prize plunderer dies to the weapon. So even though it's possible, I really don't hate the idea of actually just passing again, as crazy as it sounds.
I don't hate it either. Let's think of the worst case scenario, like a man crick added to the board. You're kind of happy about that as GivePLZ, right? Because you do get better targets for the prize plunderer at the expense of like one more extra damage this turn of leaving the Octobot up, and also giving blitzchung one more turn to possibly proc it himself. But if blitzchung has Guardian Aug Merchant here, it kind of felt like he might have played it last turn, right?
Yes, 100%.
But now the step Neophyte is available alongside field contact. Is that... I guess it is the play.
Yeah, it kind of feels like you have to do it, just because otherwise you're going passage, and I don't know, like passage with an Octobot intact is tempting because you're much more likely to be able to dump your hand. But you're just not, I think, going to be on average putting as much stats on the board.
And here it is for GivePLZ. He can kill off the Octobot and the field contact with the Foxy, but it's kind of hard to optimize this. One thief first, and then see what's in the box. Snap Freeze is the cheapest, but he's going for card draw, which is very fair because he doesn't have a field contact of his own.
Yep.
And prize plunder, then he can step his prize plunder and then get rid of the Octobot. Nicely done.
Yeah, ends up in a similar situation to last turn, but the difference is this time he has killed the field contact as well. Even if this Cult Neophyte can deal with most of the attack on this board, it is fine. GivePLZ still in a very, very good position. Just needs to make sure he doesn't fall behind on board too heavily in the next few turns before Jandis, which does not feel like an especially big concern.
Okay, one thief is a decent pickup.
It's something.
I do agree the rest of the turn looks icky because you kind of both want to dagger and Aug Merchant here to the point where maybe it even like disincentivizes the one thief. Because the Aug Merchant allows him to put Divine Shield on this Neophyte and VT the Foxy, and then the dagger takes down the prize plunderer, but I don't think that's worth like losing one additional card in your hand, plus that card might be playable immediately.
I mean, you could go Aug Merchant, the prize plunderer, and then Wicked Stab away the Foxy Fraud as well, if you're willing to accept that you just lose the card from one thief. Like, the problem with blitzchung's hand isn't lack of card draw or value, it's just lack of mana to be able to play it. Like, he has Second Passage, he has Swindle, he's just not going to be able to develop things quickly enough, I think, is the concern.
Fair, but the next turn looks a little bit awkward, right? Unless, I guess, Second Passage is not the worst thing in the world. As for GivePLZ, going to get the card draw rolling. Vanessa here would give him an Aug Merchant, right?
Correct.
It's kind of decent, right? If you go Foxy, Vanessa, Aug Merchant, Aug Merchant. Oh, sorry, he can't.
You can't do that. Yeah. Like, I'm wondering if you go Prize Plunderer Aug Merchant instead, because I don't know, Aug Merchant's okay, but I feel like you can get some much better outcomes off of a rogue. Okay.
Going for the full clear here. I do agree that GivePLZ needs this Vanessa to either pull some card draw or card generation. This is the turn I was concerned about without taking the one thief draw. So he's actually going to use it to proc the Swindle and Brain Freeze.
Oh, wow, just going with the dagger.
Wow.
My goodness. Such a scrappy game. Like, we've seen rogues just absolutely blow their opponent out of the water. In the last few series, we've seen the mirrors. But here, it's so back and forth. Neither player doing anything remotely powerful.
Both of them have been playing almost entirely for tempo, right? blitzchung has deliberately not taken One Thief for a spell in order to clear the board, and once again has played One Thief just to activate a Breen 3s. I thought it would be to activate Swindle, but then again, blitzchung has his turn 6 locked up, so fair play.
And I think you probably go for the Vanessa here instead of Cult Neophyte, or I guess Dagger as well, because the expected play is Jandis, in which case Neophyte does nothing and Vanessa for Brain Freeze is okay. But I guess if you're just going to go Mask of Cthulhu into that, you don't even necessarily need the Brain Freeze.
Oh.
Okay.
Well, maybe GivePLZ wanted a Jandis of his own, even though it's not playable this turn off of Vanessa. He was just looking for value, and he will get Jandis, but the first Jandis is much more impactful, and these minions from blitzchung are huge. He does put the illusion on the taunt, which is a bit surprising because he doesn't have any immediate payoff from the Mozaki, though.
Yeah, I definitely find that a little surprising too.
As it happens, it's better against Mask because the Mozaki has actual more health on it.
Sure, yeah. Loses out on 1 armor, I guess, by this method as well. But yeah, makes that up for the extra health, as you said.
This is a double Kazaka's turn, right? Looks super strong. Take a 5 and a 1, potentially.
Yeah, it depends what golem you get. I could see potentially holding on to the Kazakas to double play the golem next turn instead. But it's definitely tempting to go for the double Kazakas here.
All right, looks like he is just taking or saving the Tenwu to go with the golem because I don't know if he hit summon a copy, but I think he did. I can see very, very slightly the border of the text, and playing 4 5/5s seems 3 5/5s is very, very powerful.
Oi, it's gonna be close. Like, it's gotta be Jandis here, obviously, for GivePLZ to get the first big threat on the board. Talon and Alar? Okay, that's pretty good.
I don't even know which one you put the illusion on because the Talon is a bit stickier, and the Alar, like, you're okay with it dying because they also need to deal with the second half, but 7 damage is pretty big. blitzchung's on 20, and GivePLZ has the Wicked Stab in hand.
And now, straight up, if you just go double golem, they have lifesteal, of course, but there's 10 damage on the other side of the board here, and they can't necessarily get Alexstrasza guaranteed because there's still the Divine Shield in play, but you know that Alexstrasza is not going to be too far behind, and if you do trade here, then they are going to be able to get guaranteed Alexstrasza.
blitzchung's not dead yet to Alexstrasza, right? So I do favor just pushing for the board entirely here. He's also not dead just yet to double Wicked Stab. It's 1 off. So he is saying, clear this board or I'm going to heal back up. Oh, is it really 1 damage off lethal? It really is.
So you can go Jandis and then any spell damage just ends the game. Rhino ends the game.
Right.
Double
would have ended the game.
manipulator.
But oh no! And so he has to trade now at least one of them with the Alar.
Yeah. You're going
Have
for the
another
board
one.
plan.
It seems like a very flimsy board plan because this Jandis was awful, but the alternative is losing on board and the damage race because blitzchung did get the life seal, which is hardly ever a good pick, but in this situation is the absolute nuts. So he has to stab dagger 1, trade another. I think he can afford to leave 1 up. Can get the golems for himself.
Yeah, that's not bad at all. And at the very least can make his opponent's life a little bit more awkward. If he does have a secret passage hand, a field contact hand, you can make it so they can't pop off quite so heavily.
In the end, he doesn't stab either of the golems. Doesn't want to face tank the 5. That's pretty reasonable. Like, GivePLZ is also in a bit of danger of dying right now. In fact, blitzchung is also 1 off right now.
Both 1 damage off lethal. It's insane.
We saw this from Surrender versus Chonsu the other week. Just perennially 1 damage off and playing around that very hyper-aware.
Okay, well that's a free prize plunderer. Foxy Fraud as well. Like he can play this entire hand very, very easily.
Yep. Not great. Counterspell?
Yeah, I think Counterspell's pretty good here. Okay.
Care to make a wager,
Foxy
friend?
prize, step prize.
Give me that. Not what I want.
And then Golem into O3 and Golem into Jandis? Or just face?
I think you just take all the trades you can here, right? Like, you're winning so heavily on board. Okay, disagrees.
Does kill the Jandis. I do agree with killing Jandis because I don't think the Neophyte is scary to blitzchung at this point. He just has Alex in the original hand, right? So what's scary is the Jandis creating taunts somehow, perhaps. Even the 7-3 Alar is not doing anything here.
Yeah, and I guess even with the dagger, you set up pretty much guaranteed lethal next turn with the Alexstrasza. And so GivePLZ needs to find a way to clear the board and heal himself all on this turn, which, unless he can find a way to give these Greater Golems rush, generate a broomstick somehow, I don't think that's going to happen.
Yep. blitzchung has just won on all fronts, the board, the health total, and the fact that he has burst damage in hand. GivePLZ can clear, but then he's dead to Alex. He can Alex his face, but then he's dead to the board. He can summon golems and then be dead to both.
And just to think that blitzchung, despite how dominant of a position he's in here, basically guaranteed the win, was 1 damage off dying just a couple of turns ago, and then was 1 damage off lethal on his opponent. It shows the razor's edge that these rogue mirrors do have to balance on.
I love it. And this did happen in a game where one player had Octobot and the other didn't, but then the player that had Octobot didn't have the card draw to follow up, right? It was just coming off of these scrappy secret passages and very, very aggressive play for the board there. blitzchung twice used Wand Thieves for no value, or at least passed up one Wand Thief, even though it could have gotten him more cards, because he just valued staying ahead on board, realizing that the power cards like Kazakus and the Alexstrasza towards the top end can tip the scales where every point of damage matters. So that big pop-off from him is extremely warranted.
Absolutely. I think blitzchung should be very, very proud of himself. It was a well-played series overall. Blunder aside, against the Priest, where he forgot how Light Shower Elemental worked, I think that blitzchung can be very, very happy with his play that series. Bit of a weird one overall, just because it's the first time we've seen Priest left up where it hasn't been the worst deck in the matchup, because you're bringing Control Warlock, Super Greedy, Control Warrior, Mage, and all that stuff. And unsurprisingly, Priest just absolutely demolished their opponent both times we saw it, instantly taking the win. But overall, it is blitzchung who takes the win, goes through to the semi-finals, joining Surrender and Possessi. 3 out of our 4 competitors in the semi-finals already decided only now about finding who that one remaining player will be. Could still be GivePLZ, but waiting in the losers bracket match, it is going to be both Shaxi and Alu Temu, the winner of which will be fighting GivePLZ for that